Hello everyone, and welcome to the Week 2 Team Builder for the second season of the CGC Draft League. So our opponent this week is going to be Grachay, who is the coach of the Windy City Whimsies, a returning coach of Season 1, and my oh my Grachay, you've done it again. An absolutely insane team. she's such a talented draft team builder, like in terms of like creating a draft team, like absolutely monstrous. She made an incredible team in Season 1, and Season 2 is no different. She managed to get Dondozo Tatsugiri, everyone. Just let that sink in for a second. Like, we, as coaches, let her get Tatsugiri and Dondozo together. This is our fault. We could have stopped it. Someone could have grabbed Dondozo before she did. It was round 8 she got Dondozo, everyone. And we let it happen. So, yeah. Big yikes to that one. But it's not like it's completely fruitless. I have got a plan against it. It may be a very omnipresent Geo in VGC as a whole, which makes it a formidable threat in draft when your options are so much more limited, but that means you have to get a bit more creative perhaps in how you deal with it. But one of the plus sides is that at least you know exactly the plan. You're going to know you're facing Dondozo. Well, probably. Watch this all be in vain because she actually doesn't bring Dondozo or Tatsugiri. That would be absolutely wild. But we'll have to see, I guess. Yeah, so let's get into what the rest of her team is as well, rather than focus on the big fish. We've got Meowscarada as well. I think this is an incredibly smart pickup by Grachay in round 2, because she picked up the Tatsugiri, so immediately everyone's like, oh god, we know what's coming next, because she was like close to the wheel pick, and then out comes Meowscarada, which is so smart, because not only is it just an incredibly strong and fast grass type, but it's an excellent usual counter to Dondozo, at least without considering terrestrializing and such. The fact it can just get an instant crit with the flower trick through all the boost that Dondozo wants to have, like taking that option away from anyone else, that is an ingenious decision for sure. So yeah, it's got incredibly fast speed as well, base 123, which happens to rival my Noivern, which is definitely obnoxious in terms of speed tiers and such, but you know, is what it is. Sandy Shocks was an absolute snipe from me. I'm still really sad about that one. So, you know, there's almost like part of me that like it's my duty to beat the Sandy Shocks if it comes, assuming it will, because I think it's very good into my team. So yeah, I cannot let Sandy Shocks run over my team after wanting it so bad. You know, it's just like it just upset me even more, you know. We've got Pormont next. Pormont is a really solid one with Dondozo Tatsugiri stuff because of the Revival Blessing. Because Revival Blessing, being able to revive a Mon on a team is already such a powerful tool to have for your draft team, but then having it with that duo as well just puts so much more pressure on. Great speed tier, good offenses, solid Mon for sure. Double electric, you know, it works. You don't need to diversify all your typings when they play very different roles, you know. We've got Drifblim next, solid Mon for sure. It's funny, I think Grachay, of all the coaches, managed to get the most returning members to the draft, those being Drifblim, Espeon, and Masquerain. And yeah, Drifblim's a solid Mon. It's got a different few options and such. It's hard to really predict what kind of set it'll run if it's brought. It can do Tailwind stuff, of course. The Unburden proc, you might have to get a little creative in how you proc the Unburden without a terrain setter on the team. Well, I say terrain, like no ability setter. You can totally click electric terrain with Pormont and Sandy Shocks, I'm sure. Maybe grassy terrain Meowscarada, but they're very niche scenarios. You know, you don't really want to commit to that kind of stuff unless you've got a solid game plan. There's also Aftermath and Flare Boost it gets. Flare Boost is actually pretty solid if you're running Flame Orb. It allows you status immunity to maybe other things you don't want to get, and you know, it can really boost the damage quite significantly. And even though you may be taking a bit of damage each turn, it does get things like Strength Sap as well. It's got Will-O-Wisp, a bunch of different tricks. There's many ghost types too, so yeah. It's hard to really say what the set will be if it's brought, so best watch out for Drifblim. Espeon next, it's definitely a solid Mon for sure. The fact it's pretty much outspeeds our entire team, other than the Noivern, is definitely concerning. Outside of that, it's kind of just a fast attacker though. Magic Bounce is a very cool ability, but I don't think there's anything that I'm running this week that's going to make Magic Bounce much of a problem if it's brought, so not too worried about Espeon. We've got Greedent, which is a very interesting one. It's a very curious pick for Grachay's team, because when you look at it, there's not really anything that jumps out about Greedent, other than maybe it's just been like a really good mon against opposing Trick Room, because overall it is a pretty speedy draft. Like Dondozo may be slow, but ends up a lot speedier if the commander gets going, and we've got some very speedy mons outside of that, so not bad at all. It gets Belly Drum, which is pretty cool, although I guess Fake Out and Pawmot is really the only option to help support that. It's very similar to Cloister as well, in like if you want to do the setup options, there's not a crazy ton of immediate support for it, I'd say, so yeah, I guess I just thought that what would be really interesting is just having a Dondozo on the field and having the switch into Tatsugiri mind game of setup instead. So you like do Dondozo and Cloister, and you don't want to attack the Cloister because you think the Tatsugiri might just switch in, and then it'll be, you know, a point in the slot. But then the Cloister actually clicks Shell Smash. It's like, oh god, you know, Grachay, if you're watching this, you're welcome. Good ideas there. We've also got Masquerade as well, which I think last year was really good, solid into my team that I was running back then. I'm not too worried about it this time around. I've got quite a few special attackers, so the Intimidate hopefully isn't too problematic. But yeah, it's definitely not a bad bomb by any means. Like, you know, it can set up with Quiver Dance, and you know, all it takes is one boost, and that thing's hitting pretty hard. You know, with Bug Buzz and Air Slash as the dual stabs. Pretty decent. But yeah, overall I'd say the draft is definitely more top heavy on Grachay's end, and of course the Tatsugiri Dondozo are the big ones to worry about, so you know, we're trying to make this Dondozo Dunzo, if you know what I'm saying. So let's get into my team. So we'll start with Annihilate. We're once again running a Scarf set this week. We've got Close Combat, Rage Fist, U-Turn, and Final Gambit. So the only difference compared to week 1 is we're running Rage Fist over the Shadow Claw. And the reason for that is because we do actually have some proc available. If you know anything about the synergies of my team, you can maybe able to guess what that is, but I'll get into that a little later on. The speed, we've got enough speed to jump Meowscarada with the Scarf, so we outspeed that by 1 point. U-Turn is very solid into that for sure. Close Combat is just a good all-around damage dealer, so you can probably do really solid damage into stuff like Sandy Shocks if I'm not wanting to commit my life away with Final Gambit. The HP and attack, I don't think there's really any specifics. We can't KO a Dondozo with max HP on Annihilate anyway, so I believe it kind of just gets anything relevant with Final Gambit. Let me just check to be absolutely sure. Yeah, Driftblim and Dondozo both avoid the Final Gambit KO, but I mean Driftblim's going to avoid it anyway because it's a ghost type, you know. Greedent, if it's max invested, its HP is base 120, so again higher than Annihilate, so yeah, we can KO anything outside of that, but it's not worth trying to put so much HP and sacrifice attack. Our attack there wasn't really anything specific in mind for this week, just I wanted to make sure it can still hit fairly hard, especially because if we get any Rage Fist combos up, just doing as much damage with that as possible is really nice. So we just, I think we went with just a bump here. Yeah, so that's Annihilate for this week. Running Terra Grass. Terra Grass is the name to get the game against Grachay. If you look at, again, with the whole top heavy draft, Tatsugiri, Meowscarada, Dondozo, Sandy Shocks, Pawmot. Terra Grass is just really good into these top 5, I feel. You know, be able to just resist attacks and maybe even be super effective back to a few. Like, it's just really solid overall. It's hard to really say what I expect Grachay to bring this week. I think I'd be very surprised to not see the top 5. I think all of these are coming, and then as for the last mon, it's really hard to say, really. I think Driftblim is the most likely, maybe Espeon. I think something which is really interesting that I forgot to note is that Espeon also gets Psych Up, which is very scary if anyone knows about how Flamigo with Tatsugiri Dondozo stuff works. It's very gimmicky, but if you run a Toxic Orb on Tatsugiri, then you can KO yourself despite being in the mouth of Dondozo, so rather than just be stuck on the field while Dondozo's, you know, got in that commander situation, the Tatsugiri goes down, and then you usually bring a Flamigo with the is it Costar or Costar ability? Forgive my pronunciation on that one, but it traces all the boosts, you know, that Dondozo has as an ally, and while it takes a move to do it, Espeon can do a similar thing by sucking up those boosts. So I think that's a very interesting strategy that could be used. I don't really expect to see that kind of stuff, but if I do see a Toxic Orb and an Espeon on the team, I've got to be red alerts on that kind of stuff. So we've got Noivern next. Despite the Meowscarada being on the team, I still felt that max speed was worth it. I just like the idea of at least being able to tie at minimum against Meowscarada. It could help me win some 50-50s, and I didn't think going any less than that was really worth it for Noivern this week. I think the speed is very important. We've got Draco Meteor, Super Fang, Tailwind, and Protect. So Draco Meteor is a really good all-around move into a lot of the Mons on Grachay's team. Like, it hits most things for neutral, if not super effective, into stuff like Tatsugiri, which I'm pretty sure we one-shot with Draco Meteor here. We've got Super Fang, a very good move into a lot of stuff, but the Dondozo especially, because if we're worried about trying to get around the boosts, then what we can do is just cut its HP in half, which does a lot of the work for us by doing so. Tailwind is just obviously an excellent move to keep the speed control on our side, and then Protect just seemed like a really solid option in Noivern this week. You don't always run Protect on these kind of setup Tailwind mons, but I just feel like it's good to have a defensive option if I need to, especially if I'm trying to, like, maybe say there's one more turn of Tailwind and Noivern's threatened by a KO, but I know I'm going to want another Tailwind up in the game, that I can just protect that turn and most likely get another Tailwind up the following turn. Once again, running the Covert Cloak, it's good to get around stuff like the Pawmot if it's going for Fake Out, as well as Icy Wind from Tatsugiri, and we've got the Terra Fairy typing to get round any Draco Meteors or Order Ups from the Dondozo Tatsugiri stuff. So yeah, I was thinking Terra Steel at first. I kind of really got tunnel visioned on that, and I realised, wait, Terra Fairy is just way better, right? Like, sure, the Steel may resist the Icy Wind, but, you know, if it's not like it stabs, so Terra Fairy plus an Icy Wind with the Covert Cloak, like, that's kind of going to really stop the Tatsugiri from becoming a problem if it's like a Scarf set, which I am definitely anticipating it could be. I just feel like when we've got a Speedy Dragon, it just makes sense to do that kind of thing, so yeah. I feel it's nice to have Protect as well, though, so that if we are up against that kind of situation, I'm not forced to go Terra Fairy just in fear of that option. I say in fear of that option. We've got the Frisk, of course, to give us the information, assuming that Tatsugiri is led. So, yeah, Frisk, again, always such a good ability in draft. So, I think the special attack is enough to KO Tatsugiri if it's like max HP. So, yeah, that's Draco Meteor calcs really. Outside of that, we just put the rest in bulk. Another thing I'd like to add about Draco Meteor being nice is that if the Dondozo, if I am facing that, because of its unaware ability, it means that my drops on Draco Meteor won't ever be taken into account when doing damage to it. So it depends on the kind of bulk that Dondozo is running, but like the Draco should do maybe around 50% or so to it, maybe a little less, maybe a little bit more, but you know, that's before, of course, the boosts that we'll get with the Tatsu, but, you know, it's just a nice all-around move to have, you know, rather than run something like Dragon Pulse or something. Dragon Meteor's probably going to be the go-to stab for Noivern anyway, because its special attack isn't the highest, so having a higher base power move is always going to be nice to kind of just smack things, you know. We've got Gardevoir next. Gardevoir was absolutely crucial, I believe, for this week, because I was just looking at Grachay's team, and there's not a single fairy resistance. Now, of course, in a format where you can terrestrialize, that can change very quickly, but you can't ignore the fact that, you know, you can just spam fairy moves into so much for the team. So, yeah, I saw that, I was like, yeah, I must do Gardevoir this week. So we've got Moonblast, Dazzling Gleam, Grass Knot, and Protect. I didn't feel like any Psychic Stab was necessary because of what I just said there. Dazzling Gleam just makes sense to have if we're in a situation where, like, we want to get a KO or, you know, just get damage on both. So, you know, I feel like we're free and flexible to kind of go with the spread option as well as just the single target nuke of Moonblast. We've got Grass Knot because of Dondozo mainly, but also because of Sandy Shocks. We've got Terra Grass this week, so I believe a Grass Knot with Terra Grass should be able to one-shot Sandy Shocks that's like not very bulky, which is really nice calc to have. It's also so good against Dondozo because, as you would expect, it is pretty heavy, and I do believe that Grachay may run Terra Ground on Dondozo this week, and that's why Grass Knot just seems like such a solid bring, because even though we can just spam like fairy moves into it, I feel like Grass Knot just is a really good snipe. The reason I think that Terra Ground is likely is mainly because the only base super effective damage we have on our team is Jolteon, which we'll get into in a moment. And because we don't really have like any base grass types and such, just turning Terra Ground to get around like any Thunderbolt is good, and we have a fair number of ground weaknesses, which I mean you can see with the team here, like the latter 3 mons we've got here are all weak to ground as well, so like it just makes sense in my opinion to run that kind of Terra. I do think Terra Steel could be a plan as well, but I do have some plans for that as well, which I'll get into. Outside of that, the Focus Sash is just a really nice safety net to have, because, and it also synergizes well with Trace. Trace is so good this week because what we can, this is why God of War is just so important, is because what we can do is trace the Dondozos unaware, and then just ignore any of its boosts. And because Dondozo is a bit more specially squishy, just being able to hit it with Grass Knot and Moonblast is just going to absolutely rinse it. So that's really nice. It also means that with the Focus Sash, before we have speed control, what we can do is just switch in Gardevoir without fear when the Dondozo's got its boost up, if that's a situation that happens. So we can just bring it in, be brought to Sash if so, and then just KO it, hopefully, with the Grass Knot. So yeah, that's Gardevoir. Trace is such a fun ability, considering unaware shenanigans, so I say that, but I mean, what could actually screw us over is if for whatever reason the Dozo isn't unaware, because if say it's Oblivious or something, we trace Oblivious, so then that doesn't really do anything for us with its boosts, so I guess that's something to watch out for, as well as the fact that if it's Terra Steel, then we haven't got really anything to hit it with for neutral on this moveset, but it's just, I feel like it's going to be Terra Ground. We'll have to see for sure, but I just feel like this is the right set for this one. We've got Jolteon next. So this is Jolteon's debut, which is kind of cool. We've got Thunderbolt, Shadow Ball, Pin Missile, and Charm. I say Pin Missile, you know, just so casually, just like, yeah, we just run Pin Missile Jolteon. But I mean, like I did in the analysis video, I did highlight it as an actual relevant move for our team because of the Rage Fist on Annihilate. So what's cool about Jolteon's speed this week is we outspeed our Scarfed Annihilate by 1 point. So we've got Masquerada at 192. The Scarf Annihilate puts it at technically 193, and Jolteon is jumping that at 194. So that allows us to get off and Pin Missile before Annihilate attacks if we ever get in that kind of situation. We've got Charm as a really nice tech move into Dondozo. Once again, just if I'm not looking to just go right for the damage on Jolteon, especially if I'm worried about like a Terra Ground or something, just clicking Charm should allow me to take any hit that's coming my way from it. It's a good way of damage control. It's not bad into Palma and Masquerada as well. Of course, like, Masquerada can get around that with Flower Trick, but like depending on the target it's going for, like say it's attacking Noivern, like it's not going to want to go for the Flower Trick into that, so like clicking Charm into it would really weaken something like Knockoff or something, which is nice, as well as the Sucker Punch threat, because I am kind of worried about the Sucker Punch Masquerada this week. If you look at our team, there's just a lot of mons that may get taken out by Sucker Punch very quickly, especially if it's got like any damage boosting item like Life Orb or God forbid your Choice Band. That'd be very scary. So yeah, I've got to be careful of that. That's a good way to get around Sucker Punch as well. Like there may be mind games, or maybe it won't be any mind game at all if I know it's choiced into it. So yeah, that's what the main idea of Charm is. And then we've just got Thunderbolt and Shadow Ball as the damage options. Thunderbolt is just good all-around stab, and Shadow Ball kind of synergizes nicely with the Terra Ghost that we're running. So Terra Ghost this week seemed kind of cool because it gets around the Fake Out that Pawmot has, and then also is completely immune to its stabs via Volt Absorb and its Close Combat. So that's really nice. I have considered Terra Flying to be completely immune to Sandy Shocks as well. So because we've got the Volt Absorb, but then also immune to the Earth Power. But I just feel like overall Jolteon isn't a great answer into Sandy Shocks. Like it's gonna take a bit of time, even with like Terra Ghost boosted Shadow Balls to kind of take it out. It's like probably a good, like, it's not going to be a two-shot, I feel. We haven't got crazy amount of special attack on Jolteon this week. I decided that I wanted a bit of a mixture of bulk and offense, really. I don't know like if there's any specific calcs, but I know like it makes a wave crash from Adamant Dondozo, like after a charm, or it's a neutral Dondozo, I should say. I think it's a favourable roll to survive that. So I believe we can survive like a max special attack Drifblim Shadow Ball if we Terra Ghost as well. We can survive Earth Power from like Life Orb Sandy Shocks if we Terra Ghost. Not as the base electric, but overall not bad at all. We've got Skuntan next, also debuting. So we've got Gunk Shot, Sucker Punch, Haze, and Protect on this. So if we're facing Dondozo, Haze just makes too much sense to run, and we do have access to Haze on our team via Skuntank, so that's there if we need it. The Gunk Shot and Sucker Punch, they're just dual stabs really. Sucker Punch does solid damage into a lot of the mons. It's not like I'm looking for like crazy damage from it. I'm just looking to chip stuff really. And if I can bait any mon like Pormot or Meowscarada, like, or even Dondozo, trying to get KOs and such, then the aftermath can kick in, and that could do a significant amount of damage. That's really nice things to have against Dondozo. It's things that just do set amounts of damage rather than just being walled by the boost it has. So things like Super Fang having the aftermath, I think it's nice additions to have against it. Gunk Shot can also get a poison, which would be really solid into Dondozo if we get into that situation. Just really take it down faster. I did think about running something like Toxic, but I just feel like I need the damage that Gunk Shot provides, and it didn't really have room for it outside of that, because I do value having Protect on it, because even though Skuntank is pretty good defensively into some of the top dogs, like the Meowscarada and such, it's nice to be able to protect perhaps against the Sandy Shocks or something. We are running Terra Grass once again. It's just such a good defensive typing, and considering we're running it very defensively this week, it just makes sense if we want to do it in whatever situation. You may notice the bulk on Skuntank is very high this week. We're not really investing in the offenses here. The physical bulk allows it to survive a +2 wave crash from Dondozo, assuming it's like Adamant Max attack, so we will always survive that. So if we ever need to, then we can get a Tailwind up and just haze against it. So like, Tailwind, switch it in. If it takes a wave crash, that's fine, because we'll all survive it, and then haze will deal with the boost at the very least. So yeah, we've got Shuka Berry. I really wasn't sure on what item to go with Skuntank this week, but I decided to go with Shuka in the end. I was very much considering Air Balloon, but considering I want it to play a defensive role anyway, Air Balloon is kind of useless once it takes any damage that isn't a ground move. So if I want to switch in defensively against like a Flower Trick or something, and then the Air Balloon pops, and that doesn't do anything really for us, the Shuka may need to deal with any Earth Power from Sandy Shocks or an Earthquake from Dondozo. So that's the main idea behind that. I believe that's mainly everything I wanted to say about Skuntank. I guess I could just talk about how Gunk Shot is the poison stab of choice over poison jab. It may be more inaccurate, which is a bit of a risk, but I do think it is the better option overall, just because especially when we're not running much attack, it's good to have high base power moves to boost your damage overall, and something like poison jab might not be able to get KO into stuff like Meowscarada, while Gunk Shot can. So that's the idea behind that. And then we've got Knuckle Stack to round off the team. Once again, I called it the defensive backbone last week, and it kind of is very much the same here. It could play a bit more of an important role, though, mainly because it depends on what the Dondozo's terror is, because, like I've already spoken about, I think I've got a good plan into a Terror Ground Dondozo, but if it is like something like Terror Steel, then it does become a lot more problematic. But that's kind of where Knuckle Stack comes in, because we can Salt Cure a Steel type or Water type, whatever. Even if it is the Terror Steel, then Salt Cure is doing massive damage into it, and like I was just saying, having set damage kind of, especially one that's doing it over time, like Salt Cure, then it's going to be really good against it, assuming there's no Covert Cloak, famous last words. Body Press, Recover, and Protect to round off the set, it just makes the most sense with this mon. Running a little bit more physical Pulk this week, just with stuff like Meowscarada and Dondozo and Pormot running around, I just felt like it was more valuable to run a bit more physical bulk. The special defense, I don't think we can survive an Earth Power guaranteed from Sandy Shocks unless we Terra Grass, and that is an important thing I must note, actually. If we are facing a Terra Steel Dondozo, then the Knuckle Stack being the one that terrors is probably very important, just to get around that. And this is just all backup plans, in fairness. Like, Gardevoir is the main game plan. I think it's going to be really good into beating the big fish, but if we need to play a more defensive option or deal with a Terra Steel, then Knuckle Stack should help a lot against that, as well as Skuntank, just to remove the boost at the very least and allow me to work around that. So yeah, I believe that is everything I want to mention about the team and running, so I really hope you can all join me for the battle. It should be a really exciting one, so yeah, thank you very much for watching, and I'll hopefully see you in the Week 2 battle. Take care.